All right, everybody, we're going to talk condos. We're going to have a full segment designated to that. And we have two gentlemen here that are experts. And Simon, you love this topic.
Well, I do, but it's nice to have someone else actually fill in with their commentary and their thoughts because I'm, kind of getting sick of hearing myself say the same things over again. I feel like nobody's listening.
Well, they do listen to you.
But the questions still do come in, and I'd rather have experts talk about it. I think it just validates everything we've been talking about with everybody that's come in, economists and everybody else.
And Simon doesn't walk around saying, I was right, I'm right, I'm right. Not to worry. He doesn't do that.
I don't need to. I just am.
So who do we have here with us? Well, in studio, we have Paul Golini with a huge, massive smile. He's, again, the Executive Vice President and co-founder of Empire Communities, which is a fantastic company.
Great to be here again.
So wonderful to have you. You're a regular, which is great. But we have a newcomer to the show, and he's going to bring a lot of information with him. And that is Gary McIlravey. Did I say that right, Gary?
Close.
Say it for me.
McIlravey.
McIlravey. And that's Irish.
It is Irish.
So I got a fellow Irishman here, and we've got two Italians. So you know what? We are what I'd say. It's a great mix.
Mix.
You are market research manager for Empire Community. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, do you mind me asking? Because, of course, Paul, we know a little bit more about, but we'll get there in a second. When you're saying you're market research for Empire Communities, what does that entail?
That entails keeping track of the sales and sales profile of the purchasers of the communities we sell in, which are all across Southern Ontario, from Niagara to Uxbridge. It encompasses a high-rise and low-rise and a wide range of housing types. So it's a lot of purchasers in a lot of places with a lot of competition and a lot of trends. And I keep track of all of those things to help point us in the right track.
Fantastic.
I'm tired just hearing you say that, let alone the work.
Yeah, but this is exactly what we need.
Exactly.
And that's why Paul
It's
brought
true.
him along. So that's fantastic. So, Paul, good on you. Okay, let's talk to everybody again about what you do. I mean, you're a busy guy.
I'm busy with Empire, but I've been with the board of directors of BUILD, the Building Industry and Land Development Association, for many years, and involved in the industry. So I'd like to say that I have a few insights into
So you
what's
know a
going
little
on.
bit.
Yeah, I know
Just a little bit. All right, well,
Yeah.
let's go there for a moment. Because, Simon, still, a lot of people see those cranes. We still get calls coming in, people questioning you and saying, is doomsday pending? Are we in trouble? Because how are we keeping up with this?
Part of the problem is media, from a lot of different sources, whether they're qualified or not, are constantly giving that doomsday. And, I've lost count now. 6 years, 7 years in a row, 8 years in a row, they keep predicting the downfall in the market. And, of course, on an international level, people are looking at our market and saying, well, hey, it happened in the U.S. Isn't it bound to happen in Canada? But we're dealing with two different things, completely different situations. And the question constantly comes up, they're building too many condos, the assumption is. Who's going to buy all these condos? What's wrong with just that statement in and of itself, Paul? What's wrong with that?
It's oversimplification. It's looking at the condo market in a silo. And we talk about the fact, and we were just talking about it before the show, how Toronto and the GTA is really a market of neighborhoods and niche markets. It's about high-rise and low-rise at the same time. You can't talk about condos without talking about what's happening in the low-rise and the land supply in the Greater Toronto Area. It's talking about different sub-markets within Toronto. So I think we tend to oversimplify the market trends. We look at cranes, and there's a much more complex sort of underlying circumstances happening behind the scenes.
Now, Gary, we have had a banner year, right, in terms of for condos and something that you're keeping track of. What's going on this year?
Yeah, it's been one of the strongest selling third quarters in history. I think it's the fourth best third quarter in a year.
Okay.
We've ramped up in each quarter this year. We're now around 4,600 quarter sales. Not quite as high as the last quarter at 5,700, 5,800 sales, but still markedly better than a year ago when we were at 3,049 sales. This is according to Urbanation's data. I think one of the key things, too, is we've seen built inventory and unsold, unoccupied units trend downwards. There's less than 1,000 units of, according to CMHC, built unoccupied units. And built unoccupied
So that's
units,
leftover inventory.
Leftover inventory. And when you have high built and unoccupied units, that's when you have an oversupply. When you have less than 1,000 in a market that's absorbing 12,000 a year, that's not a lot of unsold inventory. If you go back 20 years ago, we had 2,000 unoccupied, unsold units in 1993, but the absorptions were like 7,000 a year. So we're in an area now where at twice as many absorptions, but the level of unsold inventory is half the amount. And if you go into the future, I think you're going to see that this is going to continue to trend downwards. as more inventory continues to get absorbed and as fewer starts occur.
Sure.
So
Now,
for an investor, Simon, I mean, I think about this and I go, okay, now Gary's made some valid points here. So there's little inventory that's left over, but yet people think that there's tons of it out there that are just sitting there empty and have no buyers. So we're saying that's not the case. It's very healthy. What's actually happening, though, is that there may be an issue where there's not enough supply for demand when we're talking condos. So I think about that as an investor going, probably a good opportunity to think about buying, because not only is there an opportunity in the upsell, meaning something will increase in value, but I look at the rental rate opportunity as well, which is extremely healthy in the GTA area.
We have a strong rental market. We have a very low vacancy rate, close to 1%. And, Paul said earlier, there's a collection of micro markets. So as an investor, you got to be a little more careful. You have to buy the right condo in the right area with the right demand. So you don't necessarily buy the smallest condo. You don't necessarily buy the biggest condo. So for investors, that's one of the important things to look at. But Gary said something about absorption rates, and on the resale side, we always look at months of inventory as an indicator of whether this is a buyer market or seller market. Well, right now,
so remind our listeners. So when we're talking about 30, 60, 90 days, so what would you like to see?
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's what the stats are. The stats are basically 5 to 6 months of inventory or more means it's approaching a balanced or a buyer's market.
Okay.
Well, we're sitting on 1 or 2 months inventory in both the resale sector and in the new sale sector.
And that's why we're seeing multiple offers crazy.
Well, because here's the thing. The headlines may imply that there's 50,000 condos coming on stream in the next year or two. Well, there's 50,000 condos maybe coming to completion, but 98% are pre-sold.
Okay.
There's very few that are actually unsold. And at the same time, we have both tenants waiting in line for the new units, as well as new end user buyers.
Both
new
Gary and Paul
buyers.
are nodding.
Yeah.
You've heard that one before, Gary. I can tell.
Yes, there have been more and more condos coming on stream in the last year as completions have ramped up. Because yes, there are more condos under construction now than there ever have been. But one thing we have to remember is that the industry's capacity to get them built has been limited to about 14,000, 15,000 units a year. Completions this year are at 12,294 at the end of October, which would translate to about 13,500 for the year projected forward. Last year, 16,700. The year before that, 14,700. 18,800 was the highest we've ever achieved in terms of completions, 18,800. So we've got absorptions running at 12, 13, 14, 15,000 units a year. Right now, we've got 12,000 absorptions, 12,000 starts, 12,000 completions. And
pretty
everything's
balanced.
Perfectly in balance. In practice, it's probably the tightest balance between completions and absorptions that we've seen in the last 10 years.
So this is not like Lucy with the chocolate line. Line of chocolates come in endless. It's actually pretty balanced. And the other thing that we got to remember is, I hear this all the time. I'm sure you hear the same. We're building too many condos versus houses. Well, what people forget is something called the green belt. And there's no more land. We have to build up. It's about intensification.
But isn't there also, Paul, affordability considerations as well? I mean, as a result, houses are becoming more expensive. It's something that you would aspire to have, but it's now not attainable for many. That condos become that new first home for a lot of people, but it's also become that home of affordability for a lot of people as well. They're actually selling out those homes, cashing in some of their money, and then living in a condo, especially when their kids are kind of a little bit more self-sufficient, or they're maybe in university. It fits a lot of people's lifestyle. And let's talk about it too, that commuting is kind of killing people. People are just getting fed up with that. Being in the car, driving to their McMansion that's out, this should really be a 20-minute drive, but it actually is 2 hours, right?
Yeah, for sure, Aaron. We're seeing the two largest buying groups, both the empty nesters that represent the over 55 with disposable income, wanting to downsize and looking at condos as an alternative. But then we're also seeing the second largest buying group, besides the baby boomers, are the millennials, who really, the only thing they can really afford is a condo, and they're typically relying for assistance from their parents or relatives or family for a deposit. But that's the largest buying group. So condos is, I like to say, relax and buy a condo is the new...
live life a little, right?
Yeah.
No maintenance living.
Well, to your point earlier, Simon, about building too many condos and not building enough single-family houses, I think that's probably the most critical underlying factor right now. People say we have too many condos. My view is if we didn't have all these condos,
Where
I
would
don't
people
know what
go?
the mess our market would be in, because there'd be nowhere for people to live.
Yeah.
We've taken out new single-family housing basically out of the future supply equation. And we have to offset that with something, and we're offsetting it with condos, and probably not even to the extent in terms of demographic replacement that we need to. And I think that's one of the things that international observers particularly have no idea about, is the fact that we don't have any single-family housing here anymore, really, to speak of. And that's the big factor that is driving people into condos, both in terms of affordability and in terms of demographics.
Don't you also think that a lot of people too are choosing to stay, let's say, single, and as a result, there is that sense of security when you know that you have people around you, you have your own space in the sky. It's a pretty sexy way to live, but that's
very
security.
safe.
It's very safe. I mean, it just makes sense. Whether you're a single woman, single man, it doesn't matter. But now also a lot of them really allow the dogs. You know, the pet-friendly component, I think, has made a big difference. Because it used to be that even when you were single, you wanted to own a home so badly. But I hear people saying they're not caring about owning a home. They just would like to own something. And a lot of people are choosing and preferring to actually own a condo.
For sure. So yes, affordability is driving the market, but now we have lifestyle, as you mentioned, and we have design, and we're seeing the building industry really raising the bar with respect to the architects and the designers that are getting involved and engaged in trying to create some beautiful communities, mixed-use communities in the city. As you had mentioned, more and more people coming down to the downtown core, and what we're seeing is an elevation of the quality in design, in architecture, and in amenities. So it's not just a matter of affordability, it's a matter of choice, and people are choosing to live in condos.
And if that wasn't the case, you wouldn't see condos in Orillia. You wouldn't see condos all around Niagara, you know, the Golden Horseshoe. I mean, Simon, they're popping up everywhere.
Well, you know, it's the Manhattan effect, and people fail to realize we have the Greenbelt to the north, we have Lake Ontario to the south. It is what it is, and you know, the time of the detached home on a big lot being the starter home is gone. I'm sorry you missed it by a few decades, but it is what it is.
But there's still lots of opportunity. So before we wrap up, Paul, I've got to ask you, you know, do you listen as a builder? Do you listen to people when they say that this is what they're looking for in a condo? This is what they want in a lifestyle. I mean, as builders, do you pay attention to your purchasers? Do you pay attention to the people and what they're asking when they come and walk through your various projects?
We have to. I think we, as an industry builders, and all stakeholders in the industry have to listen more to our consumers. Ultimately, whether they're renters or whether they're buyers, they are consumers, and we owe it to ourselves in order to make improvements in what we're delivering, both in product and experience, to listen to what their needs are.
And there's a lot of players in the marketplace, so obviously you are listening, because you wouldn't have the successes
That's
you
right.
are, not just as a company, but as an industry, without listening to the voice of the consumer, because the consumer speaks with their pocketbook, and they're loud.
And Gary, before we wrap up, I mean, we've heard Paul talk about, you know, what is Empire Communities known for, but maybe I can hear that from you.
I think Empire's Communities is known for providing the best level of complete community with a high level of design, excellent value, and in the best locations. And I think delivered with a very high level of integrity from the point of sale all the way through to the after-sales service people.
Wow, Paul, you got to like that.
Got to move them over to the
Thanks,
PR
Gary.
department.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Paul, remind everybody, if they want to check out more about Empire Communities, how can they do so?
Online, as always, empirecommunities.com. Yeah.
All right. So everybody remember empirecommunities.com. Of course, you can visit us, realestatetalkshow.ca. Call our help desk anytime, 416-366-9090. If you have any questions for Paul Golini or for Gary, so I don't butcher your last name,
McIlravey.
there you go. So make sure you have great questions and they will answer them directly. Thank you, boys.
Yeah, great to see you guys. We'll talk. We have to do this again.
For
Yeah,
sure.
well done.
Thank you.